My name is Elias Vance, and if you're hearing this, don't come to Lockhart, not on Halloween, because when the church bell tolls 12, the dead walk again. And if they catch you watching, you'll march with them next year. If you love true horror stories, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and like, share, and subscribe, because tonight's story might just follow you home. Lockhart wasn't so much a town as a scar on the landscape, a stubborn patch of life clinging to the dirt just off Highway 41. The kind of place you'd miss if you blinked. A collection of saltbox houses and wary businesses huddled against the vast, indifferent Indiana sky. The population, barely 2,000, was a closed ledger. Everyone knew your grandfather's sins, your mother's maiden name, the year the Johnson barn burned down. Secrets didn't fester here. They were part of the topsoil. But every Halloween, something in the town's old bones shifted. It wasn't a celebration, it was a remembering. I first heard the whispered words, "Midnight Parade," from old May Calder, who ran the general store with the grim authority of a wartime general. I was buying a lumpy pumpkin for the high school fair, the bell on the screen door jangling behind me. The air smelled of dry wood and penny candy. As she made change, her gnarled hand, more like a root than flesh, closed over mine. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, seemed to look right through my skull. "You get home before the clock strikes 12, Elias Vance, and you draw your curtains. You don't look out, no matter what you hear. They don't take kindly to witnesses." I laughed it off, a nervous teenage sound. "Sure, Mrs. Calder, ghost stories." Her grip tightened. "There are no stories here, only rules. You break 'em, you belong to the parade." She released my hand, and I left, the pumpkin suddenly heavy and absurd in my arms. For years I obeyed, but the year I turned 18, the last Halloween before I left for college, the curiosity became a compulsion. It was 2014. I was full of a teenager's arrogant certainty that the world's mysteries were there for my solving. My best friends were with me. Cal Halpern, all lanky limbs, and a brave face he couldn't quite back up. And Ruth Miller, pragmatic and sharp, her skepticism a shield she wore like a jacket. They came over to my house on Lockhart Lane, the one that sat a little too close to the main street. "Let's settle this," Cal had said, his attempt at a swagger undermined by the way his eyes darted to the window. "Let's see if the parade's real." Ruth rolled her eyes, popping the tab on a soda. "It's probably just the old-timers doing some weird Masonic ritual. Or kids. If we get caught spying on Mr. Henderson in a sheet, I'm never letting either of you forget it." But as the night deepened, her bravado faded. The air changed. It wasn't just cold, it was dead still, profoundly, unnaturally silent. The constant chorus of crickets and tree frogs that soundtracked every Indiana night had vanished. No distant hum of a truck on the highway, no wind. It was the silence of a held breath, a vacuum. The only sound was the frantic thumping of our own hearts. At 11:59, we turned off all the lights and sat on the floor of my living room, peering through a slit in the heavy velvet curtains. The streetlights cast a sickly orange glow on the empty pavement. Then the church bell began to toll. The sound was too heavy, too deep for the small bell in the steeple. It vibrated in my teeth. On the 12th strike, a wind kicked up from nowhere, a sudden cold gust that sent dead leaves skittering in a frantic dance. And then we saw it. From the far end of Lockhart Lane, where the road dissolved into darkness, a figure emerged. It was a woman in a tattered, lace-trimmed dress that might have been white once. It was now the color of grave dirt. Her bare feet didn't quite seem to touch the ground. They scraped the asphalt with a soft, rhythmic whisper. Her head was cocked at an unnatural angle, as if listening to a voice we couldn't hear. Behind her came a man in coveralls, one side of his head a ruined mess of shadow and matted hair. Another followed, a gaunt figure in a suit 2 sizes too big, his neck bent at a sharp, broken angle. They didn't walk, they processed, a slow, relentless glide. Dozens of them, maybe more, a river of the damned flowing down our main street. There was no sound from them, no talking, no footsteps, just that terrible, silent progression. "Special effects," Ruth whispered, her voice thin and reedy, but her grip was crushing my fingers. Cal was staring, unblinking, his face pressed to the glass. "Elias," he breathed. "That guy in front, the one with the lantern." I squinted. At the head of the procession, a man carried an old, rusted railroad lantern. It cast a weak, jaundiced light that didn't so much illuminate as push back the darkness. The man's face was grim, set in permanent lines of sorrow. "That's my dad," Cal choked out. "Mr. Halpern. He died 2 years ago when his pickup truck wrapped itself around an oak tree on Route 12. We'd been pallbearers at his closed casket funeral." A low, wounded sound escaped Cal's throat. "Dad!" Before I could move, he was on his feet, fumbling with the window latch. "Cal, no!" I hissed, scrambling up. "Mrs. Calder said—" The lock clicked. The window slid upward with a screech of protesting wood that tore through the silence like a gunshot. The cold that rushed in wasn't the chill of an autumn night. It was the deep, marrow-freezing cold of a tomb. It stole the breath from my lungs. And in the street below, the parade stopped. Every single figure froze in mid-glide. Then, as one, their heads turned, not a slow, curious movement, but a single mechanical jerk. Hundreds of faces, pale and gaunt, tilted up toward our window. Their eyes were not empty. They glowed with a faint, sickly blue light like swamp gas, and they were all fixed at us. The man with the lantern, Mr. Halpern, slowly raised his arm, his finger knobby and pale, extending to point directly at our window. The pointing was an accusation, a sentence. The lights in the house died with a soft pop. Not a power outage. The digital clock on the stove was still glowing. It was as if the light itself was being sucked from the room. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on us, smelling of wet earth and old stone. Then, from the foot of the stairs came a sound, a pause. Slow, deliberate steps on the hardwood floor we had just vacuumed. Ruth screamed, a raw, terror-filled sound. We scrambled away from the window, toward the back door. I yanked on the knob, but it was immovable, as if it had been welded into the frame. The windows in the kitchen were the same. The locks were open, but the sashes wouldn't budge an inch. We were sealed in. A shadow fell across the hallway. Figures were emerging from the darkness of the house itself, from doorways we knew led to closets, from the space under the stairs. They were inside. They had always been inside. I recognized Mrs. Gable, who used to give us apples and died of pneumonia the previous winter. I saw Tommy Finch, a kid from our class who drowned in the quarry years ago. Their faces were slack, their blue-lit eyes fixed on Cal. They surrounded him. He was trembling violently, tears cutting clean paths through the grime on his cheeks. "Dad?" he whimpered, looking past the others to his father, who now stood at the edge of the living room, his lantern casting long, dancing shadows. Mr. Halpern's expression did not change. He simply stared, his arm still outstretched. One of the figures, a woman in a faded floral apron, reached for Cal. Her hand was gray and cold. Cal flinched, but he didn't run. He seemed paralyzed, caught in the tractor beam of that collective gaze. As her fingers brushed his arm, his trembling stopped. His body went slack. They closed around him, a circle of silent, shuffling forms, and then they pulled him back, melting into the shadows of the hallway. The darkness swallowed them whole. There was no struggle, no final scream, just the profound, returning silence. The heavy pressure in the air vanished. The back door swung open with a gentle creak, revealing the first gray light of dawn. Ruth and I didn't speak. We ran into the street, our breath pluming in the now normal cold. The street was empty. No footprints, no lingering chill, no trace that anything had ever been there. But on the porch, burned deep into the wood of the top step, as if by a white-hot brand, were 3 words: "You watched us." That was 11 years ago. Ruth took the first bus out the next morning. She changed her number, moved across the country, tried to outrun it. She called me once, a year after she left, her voice thin and frayed. "I see them in my dreams, Elias. I see their eyes." She died last year. The official report said acute cardiac arrhythmia. A friend of a friend who saw the body told me the coroner had put down a strange note. The musculature around her eyes was locked rigid, frozen wide open, as if she died in a state of absolute, petrified terror. And me? I tried to run too. I went to college, got a job in a city 1,000 miles away. But Lockhart has a gravity. The memory of that bell, the image of that jaundiced lantern light, it festered in me. It called me back. So I came home. My parents are gone now. The house on Lockhart Lane is mine. I'm sitting in the living room now. The air is getting still. The crickets have stopped. It's that same suffocating silence. The church bell is beginning to toll. Bong, bong. Every toll is a nail in my coffin. I can feel it in my bones, that deep, resonant sound that doesn't come from the church steeple, but from somewhere else, somewhere deep and cold. I'm not going to look. I promised myself I wouldn't look, but my feet are carrying me to the living room. The curtain is right there. It's like a magnet. My hand is reaching out. I can't stop it. It's the trauma. It's pulling me back. It wants to finish what it started. It wants a witness. It wants me. If you find this, tell someone. It's real. The parade is real. The dead of Lockhart walk, and they don't forget a face. They especially don't forget the face of someone who watched. The bell just finished. 12 strikes. A wind just kicked up. A cold, dead wind. And I can see it now, through the slit in the curtain. The same woman in the torn dress, the same man with the caved-in head, gliding, silent. And at the front, Mr. Halpern, with his lantern. But he's not looking down the street. He's already looking at my window. He's pointing. I opened it. I don't know why. I think I just want it to be over. The lights are out. The air is so cold. I can hear them on the stairs. Thump, thump. They're not coming for me. They're here for me. Because I belong to them. I have, since the night I watched. Cal, Ruth, I'm so sorry.